Knowledge of the higher worlds and its attainment. And the subtitle is On Consciousness, Dream Life, and Initiation. That's what we're going to go over now. I'm going to begin this. This is going to be a little mini series. It should only take a couple of episodes to go over this. But hopefully you guys can get a good view of this. I am working on the lighting in here. I apologize. Today's kind of a gloomy day outside. Before I was doing it when it was really bright out. I got some new lights and equipment coming, but I'm trying to make it so there's not too much reflection on the whiteboard, but where you can also still see it, so we're not totally in darkness here. This is a good book to begin with. I think it's simple to understand, but it's difficult to apply. There are a couple of books by Rudolf Steiner with similar names, either earlier editions or other versions of this. This is a simplified version, but they cover the same material. And so in part one, we're going to talk about how is knowledge of the higher worlds attained. And so we'll start with part one. And it's a question. Question mark. How is knowledge of the higher worlds attained? And so Steiner begins by explaining that humans have higher faculties of cognition and perception that are asleep until awakened. And as we continue, he explains how to awaken these higher faculties. So there's always been methods in training that awaken these higher faculties, opening the door to the spiritual higher worlds. Such training is called occult or esoteric training. And occult just means hidden. That just means hidden or secret, unknown. Not to be confused with the word cult. It has nothing to do with the word cult. When you talk about the occult, it often gets confused with this word, cult. No, it just means hidden or secret, and it refers to knowledge, not an organization. Okay? And it's also referred to, and this is the term that we like to use, spiritual science. You'll hear me talk about spiritual science all the time. You won't really hear me say occult because it confuses people and it misleads them and it turns them off. So we say spiritual science or esoteric is a little easier, is because it's not as widely misused or misunderstood, like the word occult has been. So now I'm not going to read the entire book to you guys. This is just going to be a summary of the book. But I do recommend reading the entire book for yourself repeatedly until you not only remember what it says, but until you're applying it to your life. You can also watch this video and stuff if it's helpful, and that could be helpful as well for you. Now, some of you are going to say, but Gabriel, I can't read or I can't see. Of course, I understand that. But we already have a great reader in the Rosicrucian Teachings. His name is Dale Brunsfold, and you can listen to Rudolf Steiner audiobooks by Dale Brunsfold by visiting the Dale Brunsfold YouTube channel, or you could also visit the Rudolf Steiner Press Audio YouTube channel. And believe me, nobody can speak or read like Dale. He's truly amazing. Check him out. You'll really enjoy it. And the way he reads it, it's so easy to follow it and to understand it. I personally have listened to Dale for hundreds of hours, and I always look forward to listening to Dale Brunsfold again. You'll notice I wrote veneration on the board. And so the first step is to develop a certain attitude of soul that's fundamental to development, and that is veneration. And we follow the path of veneration, which includes devotion to truth and also devotion to knowledge. There has to be people in your life that you venerate. It could be a teacher, it could be a former teacher, including a childhood teacher. It could be a parent, or even somebody from history, like Rudolf Steiner or Jesus Christ, who I personally venerate to a tremendous degree. And while I don't come from the best family, there's always still someone in my family that I find to venerate, like my father, for example. Rest in peace. Well, let's face it, not all people venerate somebody, and those without veneration cannot develop through the Rosicrucian occult methods. So without wasting your time, Steiner begins by explaining this. That way, if, for example, if you're without veneration and you don't have any veneration for anyone, what you can do is you can go and soul search, try to develop veneration, so that then you can return and continue to the next step along the path of spiritual science. If we don't realize there's something higher than ourselves, we can't find the strength to evolve to something higher. And if you already feel great veneration, you have already gone a long way in development and are ready for the next step. Now, the way that Dr. Steiner words it is he says that we are to work energetically on ourselves to apply all of this stuff and develop. It takes a great personal effort for higher faculties and for development. It's not just given as a gift. It doesn't work that way. Learning alone does not work. It's not enough. The knowledge must be applied by the way that we live our lives energetically. And you'll notice that Dr. Steiner uses the word energetically, and I'm explaining what he means by that. Also, Steiner explains that materialism, or being materialistic, will make it very difficult, if not impossible, to apply this knowledge. And he says we live in an entirely materialistic world and age right now, so it's going to be very difficult to develop spiritually, especially for people with a lot of money, as the world seeks to control people through materialism. For that reason, Rosicrucians are opposed to materialism and point to a higher spiritual world. And it reminds me of John the Baptist with the raised forefinger in the famous Renaissance paintings. If you study the famous Renaissance paintings, and say the gesture means what you like, but John is clearly pointing upward toward heaven or the spiritual world. And Steiner goes on to explain how reverence and respect are related to cognition. If you read the entire chapter, then he'll actually break it down more than I'm explaining. Now, the fundamental principle is as follows. So there's a fundamental principle, and the fundamental principle is as follows. All knowledge pursued for personal gain will lead you away from the path, but all knowledge pursued with a desire to help humanity is a step forward along the path. And that's known as the fundamental principle right here. And so it's important to cultivate feelings of admiration, respect, and veneration for the world and for life. And that's not easy to do at all. And it could be difficult in a difficult world. But what I do is I personally respect, admire, and venerate Rudolf Steiner and Jesus Christ. So I constantly try to remember them and think of them every second of every day. And I look for ways to manifest in the world. I look for ways that that they manifest themselves in the world around me through good people, through the beauty of Mother Nature, and so forth. So we have to learn to look for the good in everything. A mother or father is devoted to caring for their child. A child could feel reverence toward a parent as well, for example. A soul that exercises feelings of reverence and devotion experiences a change in its aura. And so what happens is our aura begins to change as we develop reverence. So you'll notice that people who have reverence as a fundamental part of themselves, their aura looks different than people who don't have reverence. So a person with reverence, after they have developed the reverence, or if they already have it, their aura is a purple color. Before you develop reverence, or if you don't have reverence, then your aura is more of a rust color, like a reddish, brownish, or a reddish, orange rust color. So a clairvoyant, and it doesn't even take full clairvoyance either. You begin seeing the aura pretty early on, and a person can tell just by looking at somebody, by looking at their aura, they can tell if they have reverence or not. And if you don't have reverence, it's actually a terrible thing. That means you really can't see beyond yourself, and you don't. People without reverence have trouble seeing any higher part of themselves. They think that they're already all set. They're as good as it gets. They're as high as it goes. And so there's no room for development without reverence. So the student is next instructed by Dr. Rudolf Steiner to develop a rich inner life. So we're not supposed to close ourselves off to the outer world, but rushing from one outer sense impression to another without developing a rich inner life will prevent spiritual development. So deep inner reflection and meditation are required, and the student has basically a set of inner exercises that they do each day. We do a bunch of different meditation exercises, for example, as well as a daily retrospection, which is another exercise, which is an inner exercise done before going to sleep each day. The meditation exercises include inner thought, inner speech, as well as inner visualization. We say certain things, we think certain things, we visualize certain things. We say certain things and then visualize certain areas of the body, and they're all kinds of meditations that we do. I'm not going to be teaching the inner meditations or exercises here today, but I do teach it in other videos, and I'm going to actually go over them again in the near future. And they're all based off of Rudolf Steiner's books. And you can also read Rudolf Steiner's books where he gives these exercises and meditations that are done daily. Before I finish here in a minute, let me read a passage from the book. And again, this is the book that we're going over here. And so the passage that I want to read, it goes as follows. All knowledge pursued merely for the enrichment of personal learning and the accumulation of personal treasure leads you away from the path. But all knowledge pursued for human ennoblement and cosmic development brings you a step forward. And so that's the fundamental principle that I summarized a few minutes ago, but I just read it a little more word for word, the way Rudolf Steiner has it presented. And so we're going to continue next Monday, beginning with the importance of developing inner tranquility. That'll be the next thing that we go over. Before I finish, though, and before I end this, I do want to mention briefly initiation. You'll notice that initiation is mentioned in the subtitle, and it's a topic of what we're discussing here today. And some of you are going to say, "But Gabriel, I'm not a Freemason. I've not a part of any group, and I haven't had any kind of ceremony. And how can I be an initiate?" And the answer is there are different types of initiation. And everything that I'm going over and teaching you guys is actually a form of initiation. This is what's known as a Rosicrucian initiation. And it's a Christian initiation. It's a Gnostic Christian initiation. And so the Rosicrucian initiation is different than other initiations. You don't have to join any organization. You don't have to go to any meetings or anything like that. You don't have to pay any fees. You don't have to take any tests. It's all done, at your own pace. Everybody's at different stages and levels. And as you learn the Rosicrucian teachings and you apply them to your life, you are becoming initiated. You are going through the initiation. And you'll learn more as you learn more about the Rosicrucian teachings. You'll learn more about the initiation and the actual different steps. I'm going to go over it with everybody more moving forward. I'll break it down. But I do want to say real quick before we go, beware of false Rosicrucian organizations.